Don, thanks for coming on tonight.
You're welcome, Stephen.
I should say Donald, you look more like a Donald than a Don. It's been a while since you've been on, I think a couple of years, probably.
About 2 years. About a year, actually.
Is that all?
About a year.
And I really like your, what would you call that, your Van Dyke? Was this called a Van Dyke or?
Van Dyke.
Is that right? I mean, when it's kind of got this?
I think it's a Van Dyke.
I think it's very becoming. Do you trim it yourself or?
I trim it myself.
You do a good job, a very good job.
Scissors and my razor.
Well, you know, we have talked about the smoking ban in public housing, you and I before, and it's come up recently because on January 24th, there was some talk about it at the monthly commissioners meeting. And, you know, I think there's a new director of operations by the name of Petruzzi.
He has recently retired.
Petruzzi?
Well, I don't know if he left on his own, he was ousted, but he recently left.
Really? I mean, it wasn't, well, had he taken over from the woman who was there when,
He took over from James Comer. James Comer was the director. Faith Marshall was the deputy. Faith had left.
and then what about this fellow Johnston?
Mike Johnson, he was director of lease housing, I think. He then was promoted to the deputy director of housing, and when, I forgot his name, the previous director retired, Mike was appointed director from deputy.
So who, Mike who?
Mike Johnson.
Is it Johnson or Johnston?
Johnston.
Okay.
It's potato or potato.
Well, I mean, so there were some people that put a T there and I, you know, would pronounce it
It's
Johnston.
with Johnson.
Johnston, right?
Johnston or Johnston, depending how you pronounce it.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, the thing is that, Dean Petruzzi is no longer the director of operations.
He's no longer. And he actually put a halt on the smoking policy at the Manning while there were renovations being done on it. He said it will not be forced till the renovation is complete.
Oh, not be enforced.
No, it was not enforced, but now that Linda Snowden Downing is the deputy director, it was brought to her attention that it was not being enforced there. She in turn got a hold of management who in turn have now been enforcing the policy.
Right. So, but there was talk at this January 24th meeting that there were some problems with the smoking policy, particularly for people who were elderly or mentally ill, that some of the people in the administration, namely Petruzzi and Johnston, felt that things were not going so well for them. You know, these, particularly the elderly people. Now, do you know anything about this as a resident and as a person who is kind of an activist, I would say?
I do know, I've heard complaints from the elders, folks with psychiatric disabilities who smoke often to help counter effect their medication, were unhappy with the new policy.
Well, and
some residents were found smoking in their apartment.
right, from what I understand by, according to this article is in the Cambridge Day, there haven't been, only one person has been evicted from.
That is true from what I understand.
Right, so, I don't know exactly what they plan to do, and now that Petruzzi has left, and we don't know under what circumstances he left.
I don't know what, from my understanding, it will be enforced to the letter of our new lease.
Well,
And any
what-
resident that is found smoking will be given a warning. A
Right.
second warning is they get a 5-day notice. They go meet with their property manager and possible eviction.
Right, and I think, well, when they set the whole policy up in 2014, I think there was supposed to be kind of 2 or 3 warnings
I
and,
think, yeah, it is 3, but there's 0 tolerance after 3.
0
You'll
tolerance.
get written up and there might be cause found for your eviction.
Right, but of course eviction can take a while too,
Yeah.
right? And,
You can fight it in court.
well, I mean, I just wonder, like, for example, I met, in the course of my advocating for, against the ban, you know, I met one woman who was a smoker and she was 85 years old. And basically, she spent a lot of time smoking and watching TV and drinking alcohol. I mean, I don't think she was an alcoholic, but she liked to have her nips with her. I mean, what is someone like that supposed to do? I mean, do you have an
They
idea?
either have to quit or
Right.
they adhere to the smoking policy and smoke no closer than 25 feet of any entrance to any CHA building,
Right,
no smoking in common areas, or
But-
face eviction.
an 85-year-old, yeah,
Or you can request a reasonable accommodation to be closer to a doorway to get
you
out.
see,
of
that would be, but that would be something. And then, for example, I met, a woman who was at, Roosevelt Towers, who obviously had severe psychiatric problems, and she was hysterical. I mean, you know, that this would be, frightfully disruptive, to her life, you know, so.
And it is in some ways.
Right,
And can I remind you and your public, I was on the Healthy Air Smoking Committee that recommended this ordinance, and I
Right.
was threatened.
you were threatened by who?
I was threatened by Cambridge public housing residents within and without my development.
Well, this isn't an ordinance, this is
Well,
a,
not
this is a,
ordinance, but the policy within the lease. I was threatened with my safety if this was going to pass.
right, but evidently no action was taken against you.
Not yet.
No, well, I don't think it's gonna happen now. I know there were a couple of people, at least one person, who lived in public housing, and actually still lives in public housing, who definitely had what you would call anger management problems.
Sounds like me.
No, I've never seen, well, I mean, I don't know, do you have anger management
Yes,
problems?
I do.
Is
As
that
a
right?
result of my brain injury.
Well, this person, I've never seen you nor I've heard that you have such, but I will take you at your word nonetheless. But this person, he did, I don't know if he actually threatened people with violence, but he certainly became he became very bellicose. He has a tendency to be very bellicose. Well, I mean, they were supposed to also have designated areas outside.
They do, they have. Mr. Petruzzi's train of thought was, since it's the building in transition, it will not be enforced till the end.
Of
But it
the-
was, when it was brought to Brenda Snowden Downing's attention, she said, no way, this is part of your lease, it needs to be adhered to now.
Right,
So
so
the temporary area is now permanent.
oh, you have a temporary smoking area at,
Yes, but it will
Manning.
also become the permanent, there's actually 2 areas for people to smoke.
Right,
One is down the Franklin Street ramp by the library, there's benches.
yeah,
And in the back entrance of the Franklin Street entrance, there's tables set up for people to smoke.
right, are there coverings so that,
They're covered.
there are covered?
Yes, at one time, I think there were 5 tables, they removed 3, and they had since put a bike aids there, and the 2 that are reserved for smoking, I think, adhere to the 25 feet away from the doorway.
Of course, you know, it's sometimes difficult, you know, I think people can smoke in their apartment, without being found out. I mean, you know, if you open the windows and so forth, it's unlikely, and you don't
Possible.
smoke too much, you're not gonna probably be found out. Right?
I can't comment on that. Well, I will, I'll say it's possible.
Yeah, right. Now, has there been any problem with pot smoking in the building at all?
Well, I don't know what you mean by problem. Yes, there's people who've been smoking pot in our building.
Because I know,
Smelled it.
I know in the building I live in, which is a smaller condominium building, which thank God, does not have any kind of policy in terms of smoking. But I know that a few times I have gone into the public area, where the stairs are that go down, and the smell of pot was just overwhelming.
Does Cambridge Housing Authority own your
No,
building?
I live in a private condominium, has nothing to do, thank God, with
Why-
Cambridge Housing.
I ask because they do own a couple of buildings that are condos.
Do they really? Oh, yeah, and they have condos and Section 8s and stuff?
I'm not sure if Section 8, but they do own.
Are you talking about 411 Franklin?
No, that's a private development
Yeah.
with attached Section 8.
Oh, okay. Well, all I know is that, for example, when I smelled marijuana smoke in my building, I was very concerned because I don't want my neighbors to be disturbed by either marijuana smoke or tobacco smoke, because I don't want to get them, on the warpath, so to speak. And so it hasn't occurred very often, but marijuana can have a very, very strong smell.
It does.
Much, I think, it was amazing. So what I did was I opened the doors and so forth and made sure the place was aired out. But so you have smelled marijuana in Manning?
I have.
And has that issue become a matter of public concern there at all?
No.
No.
There's been some comments, but not a big public issue.
Well, how active are you in the politics of Manning?
Not huge.
Not huge, because, I don't know,
I go to tenant council meetings.
and those are
I
pretty,
usually have discussions with management, but I'm not very active.
and the tenant council itself is not active?
It's very active,
Oh, is it?
yes.
But not in terms of politics or in terms of politics?
They're active not concerning politics per se. They will address residents' issues. It's more of a social tenant council.
Well, I think a lot of times tenant councils work out that way.
Yeah.
Keep people familiar with one another and friendly with one another and
That's our primary
activities.
goal with Manning.
And it's a good idea because if you have that many people living in a building like that, it's good that they know each other.
It
Right.
is. It is. And can we remind the public that I am not a smoker, I'm against smoking, but I defend people who do smoke.
Now, when you say,
Not literally, but I defend the rights
well,
of
you could
people.
defend them literally too if we get started, if we have a.
Well, I'm not an attorney.
I was always worried about having a crystal knocked, where there'd be so much antipathy towards smokers that, people would start hitting smokers. Well, when you say you defend smokers,
Well, I defend people's right to smoke.
right to smoke, but the question becomes
not
where,
in
when,
some
and
areas.
how. Well, what areas would you defend the right to smoke?
In public, if you're walking down the street, if you're
Right.
sitting on a bench in Boston Common, which is against the law to smoke.
Right. Right now, it's against the law to smoke in all public parks in Cambridge. Excuse me,
Boston,
in Boston.
in Boston. Cambridge, not yet.
No. Cambridge, thank God, we were very active, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights.
I remember that. It was up for bid that it was going to be against the law.
And I think we were able to persuade Mark McGovern in particular, who was, I think, the person who had introduced this, that this would have a very adverse effect, particularly on the homeless population.
A very adverse effect. He's a staunch defender of the homeless.
McGovern?
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the things that we made that point to him.
Excuse me.
But I mean, you know, right now in New York City, there is someone who is introduced a bill that would make it illegal to walk down the street smoking a cigarette.
I have heard of that proposed ordinance.
And that you would have to, if you were smoking a cigarette, you have to stand still.
That's ludicrous.
Well, I mean, he says he gets behind someone who's smoking and then he smells the smoke, and that's annoying to him, and he thinks it's probably annoying to many other New Yorkers. How would you counteract that argument?
Walk away?
Walk in a different direction, etc.
Or walk around them?
Well, I mean, some people in the anti-smoking field
Or
are...
might get paranoid that I'm gonna die of secondhand smoke.
Exactly,
I don't know.
right, well, that's it. I mean, how would you counteract, I mean, they say there should be zero tolerance for secondhand smoke. You should never, ever have to smell the slightest wisp of it anywhere.
I feel secondhand smoke can be dangerous, but we also have to allow someone's right to smoke down the street.
So you would say that public parks, and on the street, people should be able to smoke. Now, what happens if I wanted to open a bar in Cambridge and put a huge sign outside saying, "This is for smokers"?
You can't.
I know, it's against the law,
Yes.
against state law. Do you think that's going too far?
No.
Why not?
Because if me as a patron wants to go to the bar and have a drink,
Right.
I should do so without the fear that I might be harmed by that secondhand smoke.
But it is a private establishment owned by someone who pays the rent, who pays the heating, pays the lighting, pays the employees, pays the taxes, pays the property
Well,
taxes.
what if I want to become a member and just hang out?
You mean in that particular bar?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have a choice. You could go
Wait,
to,
is this open to the public or just,
it's open to anyone who wants to come in, but there is a big sign saying, if you do not like secondhand smoke, please do not come in here.
that would be against my civil right.
Well, would it? I mean, you know,
Because I have the right to go to any bar that's open to the public.
well, let me just think.
Interesting.
I mean, but you know, that's an interesting issue because open to the public, does that mean it's a public place? And
It's a public establishment, it's just not for members.
well, of course, you don't necessarily have the right, like, for example, if you don't have enough money to afford that, like, you could say, I mean, I suppose you have the right to go to, an expensive restaurant, but if you don't have the money, you can't go. So it's not really open to the entire public,
Well, it is if you can afford it.
if you can afford it, right? But there is actually a place in, New Hampshire right now, it's a business, and he says he will not serve any Republicans,
That's wrong.
but it's legal,
But it is?
yes.
How is it legal?
Well, you are allowed to discriminate on many, many bases. Like, for example, I could have a bar and I could say no one with a college education should come in, can be served here.
How is that possible?
Well, no, because the law is written that, for example, I can't discriminate on the basis of race, religion, national origin, sex, male, female, and I think maybe sexual orientation. I don't know in
Disability?
Massachusetts. Right, the ADA covers that pretty heavily.
But
I'm not sure, but that's an interesting question. I don't think you can
there's
say that.
public accommodation laws that specifically say cannot discriminate on the basis of someone's disability.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about yeah, right, so that's probably included there too, but I can discriminate on the basis, on every other basis.
Well, but there are public accommodation laws that actually skirt that also. I
But
thought I was under the assumption.
no, you're under the wrong impression, I'm sorry to say. Like, for example, I can, if
I'll
someone
defer
could come to my bar
you.
and I could say to them, I'm sorry, I heard you voted for Trump, or I heard you voted for Obama, or Clinton, let's say, and I refuse to serve you. That is not a violation of civil rights law.
No, I know not a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Right. But it's not a violation of any other law.
Okay,
And that's why this person, for example, in New Hampshire,
not a problem.
it's not, I mean, you may find that wrong, or you may find it stupid, but it's not illegal by our, you know, like,
Yeah.
well, but I can't discriminate on the basis of disability. I can't say to someone, you can't come in here because you're carrying a cane, for example, or you're not carrying a cane.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do that either. Like, I don't think I could say, have a restaurant where only
You
people.
definitely cannot discriminate on someone's having or having not a disability.
So you can't you can't say, I want to have a restaurant only for people who have disabilities.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably. I don't know if the ADA says that. I don't know where, that might not be the case.
Okay.
I mean, but it's really kind of moot, as we say. Let me ask you a question.
I don't have this law in front of me, so I can't say you're wrong.
And the ADA is what, about
But
2,000
I
pages?
don't think it's just the ADA. There's various federal and state statutes that talk about disability.
Let me ask you a question that I was watching a show last night on public television, and it was about, it was called Two Roads to Memphis. And it had to do with James Earl Ray and Martin Luther King, and how they're,
Yeah.
eventually they intersected their fates, if you will, or destinies, or whatever you want to call it. And I was struck because a lot of it was dramatization. And everywhere they could, the producer had James Earl Ray smoking cigarette after cigarette, you know, kind of depicting him as a heavy smoker.
And he was.
How do you know that? Do you know that?
From reading about him.
Was he a heavy smoker?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. I don't know a lot about him, but I know that he smoked.
Well, this was like really brought home so heavy, and yet they didn't say, for example, that Martin Luther King was shot while he was smoking. Did you know Martin Luther King was smoking when he was shot?
I did not know.
He was on the balcony of the Lorraine Hotel, and he was
I did
smoking
know
a
that he
cigarette.
smoked. I didn't know he was smoking that.
He was. I mean, I felt that this was kind of manipulating the use of smoking and, you know, kind of as an unsavory habit for unsavory people. Do you think that is a kind of a legitimate use of the media and public television? If the facts that I give you are accurate.
Well, I would say no, because they showed Martin Luther King smoking a cigarette as James Earl Ray, who was a heavy smoker, shot him while he was smoking.
While Martin Luther King was smoking.
Yeah.
But they didn't show them that Martin Luther King was smoking when he was shot. They eliminated that.
Oh, they did.
Yes.
Then that's wrong.
Because why? Why is that wrong?
Because it's unfairly discriminating against smokers.
And it's also an inaccurate depiction of history.
Very inaccurate.
I went to see a movie called, it had to do with Dunkirk, you know?
I saw that movie.
Did you notice that none of the soldiers smoked in that movie?
I didn't notice that.
None of
The
the...
soldiers were very heavy smokers.
But I think the makers of that movie eliminated smoking because, I mean, this is how this is permeated into our culture. And I think, and I'm glad that you agree with me, that history should depict it as accurately as possible.
Very accurate.
We shouldn't eliminate things that are bad for us. We only have 10 seconds. You have to come on again, I hope soon.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for defending the rights of
Thank you
smokers.
so much.
That's it.